go in with the mindset that you are going to learn and you're going to share your strengths and you're going to connect in a collaborative and a positive way.
My name's Peter Sumpton, and this is the Marketing Study Lab podcast. A podcast for those that are thinking, have thought and are doing, or already have a marketing qualification. But there's a little bit of something for everyone, as we cover a whole host of marketing topics. I chat to some amazing guests, each one a superstar in their own niche. And if you have a burning marketing question already, or after this episode, get in touch, we'll chat it through. peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk, or find me on LinkedIn, the link is in the show notes. If you'd like to leave a review on iTunes, this will really help others find this podcast and spread the marketing word. Now let's get on with today's episode. Just how credible are you? And how important is credibility for a business? We'll find out later when we take a look at credibility, the fourth and final C of marketing communications. But first, let's meet Monique Russell, an executive communication coach. Sounds pretty prestigious, doesn't it? Well, what Monique does is help corporate professionals improve their communication skills. And to date, she has taught over 2,000 people globally. Imagine the communication and the conversations that are going on with those 2,000 people. Wow. Monique has also helped inspire parents who are stuck on how to motivate their children, which she's tremendously proud of, and rightly so. But what I want to get into is the type of communication skills that you, the listener, need right now, in business and in education. Especially if you're new to a business and want to make that great first impression. Or simply communicate with your colleagues more effectively. That'd all be wonderful, wouldn't it? But as a communication coach, I'm guessing, just guessing, Monique can talk and communicate to anyone about pretty much anything. So, Monique, what do you like at selling houses?
I am very clear, very direct, but I can be grandiose.
Okay. So, is that in terms of the house or in terms of yourself being grandiose?
In terms of the house, I can be grandiose, especially if I feel that the house is something that is a perfect fit for the client. Although, you're really not supposed to do that. It's not about you. It's about their needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I can be grandiose. I can just really highlight the features and really sell the features and help people to see themselves experiencing the features of the home.
Oh, I like that. That's why you are a communicator at heart.
Yes.
Which brings us nicely on to the first main question. What's the story that's brought you to this stage of your career as executive communications coach at Clear Communication Solutions?
My story basically is that I went off to school and I studied broadcast journalism. I continued on studying communications, marketing, and PR. I got 2 graduate degrees in both disciplines, but Peter, I couldn't figure out, or I couldn't find a way to break into my field. I applied for hundreds and hundreds of jobs that I wanted to start in the broadcast arena and then transition to marketing and PR. But I couldn't find one that was sufficient enough for me to pay my bills. I had tons of student loans and then just start living. So I started off working in executive support. It wasn't where I wanted to be, but that's where I started. And I didn't know it then, but I know now, basically that was my first hands-on practical training. Because when you are in executive support, you're acting like a second brain, if you will, for people who are in leadership roles. And there's so much going on behind the scenes that you always need to have someone to bounce ideas off of. And that was me. And it happened to be situations like, how do I engage my team? What do you think about this messaging? What do you think about this approach? Just really finding ways to improve the engagement. Sometimes it was just simple issues and sometimes it was really, really complex. And it was fun for me because not only did I already have the training, but it was something that I loved to do. It was my goal. So this is kind of how my journey, or I guess pieces of my journey, fit into what I'm doing today. I never said that, oh, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to be an executive communications coach. No, I always wanted to be in communications no matter what it was. Wanted to be on stage, wanted to be on TV, did a little bit of acting here and there. But I brought it into the corporate space. I started freelancing for myself in 2008, and that continued throughout everything I did over the years. So I was in marketing, helping people with advertising, their PR strategies, writing, anything and everything in that whole communication spectrum is what I started freelancing when I wasn't clear. I said, if it looked like communications, I could do it. So I learned the hard way that you have to focus and you have to niche. And then when I got really clear and when I started investing in myself and hiring coaches and mentors and getting into community, that's when I got really clear on my core focus, which is interpersonal and intrapersonal communications. So while I can talk about marketing, it's not my area. While I can talk about PR, it's not my area. And the truth of the matter is, things have changed significantly in those industries as well.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it's great that we've got you on to focus on this clear communication, if you like. So, which leads me nicely on to, if you could just explain to us what you actually do as an executive communications coach.
I know it sounds fancy, right?
Yeah, very. I'm a bit nervous.
No, don't, not at all. So listen, executive communications is just really focusing on the part of your brain that is responsible for executive functioning skills. So, your executive functioning skills include things like your memory, your decision making, getting clear, having clarity, having self control, social awareness. It's just the things that go beyond the technical aspects of your area of expertise. So, you have your competency area, which is your skill, but your skill can only take you so far. You have to develop those, I don't want to say soft skills, but that's what people use it. You have to develop the skills that allow you to connect with yourself and to connect with others in an effective way. So being able to have an executive communications coach is having someone who can provide the support, who can provide encouragement, who can provide accountability and clarity as you're developing your goals and really maximizing your individual human potential. It's the fastest way, one of the fastest ways I know how to maximize your individual human potential, because you cannot see everything from outside. We just don't know how we're coming across sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I just want to put some practical application on this, if you don't mind. If we take internal corporate communications, and we know how important it is to communicate internally, externally, in terms of a corporate environment. But take this scenario: you've applied for a job and you've got the role, so you've just started in a new company, and your emotions and nerves are a little high. You might not be acting 100% yourself, not 100% comfortable. How do we combat this and focus on positive communication and making a good first impression?
That is so important. And I know at that time, you want to get in and you want to prove yourself as soon as possible. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, my my window of proving myself is high. I want to get in and I want to just do a good job. But my suggestion to that is, when you go in, you have to pay attention to what is happening around you. Go in with the mindset. Everything is a mindset. So go in with the mindset that you are going to learn and you're going to share your strengths and you're going to connect in a collaborative and a positive way. Start first with your mindset. When you get in there, you want to be curious. That's the thing I would say. Be curious about every single thing and ask questions, because you need to pay attention to the work culture. Every work place has a internal culture. And if you're not familiar with that culture, or you can't identify the things, the unspoken things that people do, you will find yourself in a situation where you're not fitting in, or you're not connecting in a way, or you're standing out in a sore way. So if you see, most people come into the office at a certain time, or people seem to leave at a certain time, you can start to take note. This is not to say that you just want to do every single thing that you see, but you want to make sure that you are observant of the way people communicate with peers, communicate with their leaders. If it's an open door policy, you just have to pay attention to those things and getting clear on what your strengths are, so that when you are in that space, you know how to position and how to communicate your brand or your value at work.
So just picking up on one point there, understanding the work culture. Is it quite easy to spot that culture?
Sometimes it can be, just like what we're talking about in terms of dress code, in terms of um, arrival times. What do people do on Fridays? Is there a work from home policy, or is that something that is frowned upon? So those are some of the things that are very easy to identify. Things that are not so easy to identify, I'll tell you, I remember working with an organization, and from the outside, I didn't know what was going on. But when I started working with the leadership team, I realized that there was some gaps that no one spoke about. And my question was, how come, there's so many people around this leader? How come no one is speaking up, or no one is saying what needs to be said? So that right there, good or bad, that was a part of their culture. There were board members surrounding this leader. There were other leaders surrounding this leader. And there were things that needed to be said that went against what the leader did, but no one was speaking up. No one said anything. So if you are in a situation like that, you have to pay attention to the signs and the cues and really understand what's going on, and then determine if this is something that you want to take on, or if you're going to just blend on in. This is the reality of what we're facing today. And I'll just say, for anyone that's going into an organization, the biggest thing that you want to do is make sure that you are clear on yourself. You want to enhance your self-awareness, because having that clarity and having that conviction in who you are, what you believe, what your values are, and what you stand for, it will give you the confidence and the courage to move successfully in the organization. Just, know that your skill set is not what's going to get you to that next level, especially if you're trying to move up in an organization. If you are comfortable just being at that doer level, fine. Your skill set might just be great, but competency has a threshold. So when you get to a point where you're like, okay, I want to get more into management, I want to get more into leadership, you're going to need to take that time to understand how to get along with people and how to get along with yourself.
Wow, that's fantastic. And it leads me perfectly onto this next question. So say you are at that door level, and you're talking to senior members of a company, which can be massively daunting for some people, that seniority, if you like. How can we make sure we're clear and understood, and we're potentially talking their language, if you understand what I mean?
Yeah, it can be nerve-wracking just because of the position. Just naturally. I always tell leaders, you have to do a little bit more, just because the natural state of your position already creates some unspoken psychological hierarchy, whether you want to or not. It does automatically create that space. So if you are in that leadership position, you have to do a little bit more to make sure that people feel safe and open to be able to come and have that conversation with you. If you are on the other side, and I'll tell you, I remember I worked with a lady, and this is exactly one of her goals. She was excellent at what she did and wanted to get more visibility, wanted to connect up with the higher ups, wanted to be able to do presentations or have presentations where it made sense. So you always want to make sure that if you're communicating, not just with someone who is at a higher level than you, but anybody in general, but for the purposes of this question, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to who it is that you're speaking. What is the purpose of this communication? What outcome do I want to have? What do I want this person to know, do, feel, or experience? Sit down and ask yourself, what do I want to get across? First, you take time to do this on the front end so that you make your communication message and your delivery much more effective. What do I really want to communicate to this person? What do I want to say? Write that down. And then once you put that down, you ask yourself, how does this person need to hear it? What do I know about their views? What do I know about their position? Is there someone who wants to have a high level overview, or do they need to understand why? Do I need to position, here's what the problem is, here's what I think we need to do? Or do I need to present it to them in a way that I am creating a conversation, sort of posing a question? Peter, I had some thoughts about this upcoming project. I noticed that we may not make this delivery date on time, and I'm thinking that we might need to implement a stopgap or a new strategy. What are your thoughts on that? So it all depends on the person that you're talking to, how they communicate. But you get this awareness and you get this knowledge because your executive communications coach has helped you to develop the awareness of your own personality, your own skill sets, your own strengths, your own motivations. And in heightening your awareness, you're now able to look at others and see, wow, this person has this type of personality. They communicate in this way. This is what is important to them. But until most people do it backwards. They do it the outside approach, outside in. I just need to get my message clear. How do I say this to them to get them to listen to me? How do I get them to be motivated? And then those tactics and those strategies don't work because the part that's missing is that internal piece. And then you never, ever feel confident. I did it and I think it went well, but I don't know. I feel like I messed up, or I couldn't tell. They didn't respond well because you're doing the outside in approach.
Yeah, I can relate to that outside in approach. I think I need to change change my tact a little bit. What I'm interested to understand is there a different type of skill set in talking to an individual, as we've been discussing, as opposed to a group of people?
No, not at all. So skill. Skill is something you learn and you have it for the rest of your life. It's like riding a bike, right? So if I get on my bike and I'm riding, I learn how to ride, but let's say I don't ride my bike for 10 years and then I jump back on. I might be wobbly for a little bit, but eventually those muscles, that muscle memory is going to kick in and I'm going to be able to ride my bike. It's not going to be as though when I first started riding my bike. So when you're speaking to someone, the skills that you use, like listening is a skill. So whether you're talking to one person or you're talking to a lot of people, that skill of listening is going to be very important. That skill of putting away distractions. So the things that block us from listening effectively are the distractions in our mind, right? All of those things. Our mind is someplace else, or we're trying to figure out, what are they saying? How can I make myself look good with this response? And all that good stuff. Whereas also, another thing that blocks effective listening is our own internal judgment. Maybe we already have some opinion about the way someone's dressed, the way someone's looking, the way their accent sounds. And all of that is noise, mental noise. But if you are able to take the skill of reducing that distraction and pretty much trying to eliminate that judgment, you make your conversation or your communication much more effective. You do the same thing when you're speaking to a group of people because you're listening to what they are saying. You're listening to the message that they're giving you non-verbally and verbally, and you can craft and tailor what you're delivering according to that. And now I will say this. When you are speaking to one person, you have an opportunity to go so much deeper to create your connection pieces in a stronger way. So because it's just one person that you're talking to. Whereas when you're talking to a larger group or an audience, you have to deliver the message in a much more broad way because there are multiple people, there are multiple stories, there are multiple connection points. If I use an example of an apple dropping off a tree, that might connect with one person. If I use, planting seeds in the garden, that might connect with another person. So the goal with talking to multiple people is to find general points or general stories that are similar that enable you to connect or make that connection, because that's where the understanding comes from.
Okay, I just want to go back to our scenario. We've had our first day. We feel a lot more comfortable. We're part of the team now. We enjoy the culture and all that kind of stuff. But the team's growing, or I'm part of a large team in a company. How do I start to get noticed? Are there any techniques that can help us set us apart from the rest of the pack?
Mm. So I am thinking of actually two different people that I worked with.
Okay.
One was a gentleman and one was a lady. And in the gentleman's case, he had been in his organization for almost 20 years, but he was actually thinking of leaving because of this very same thing. Didn't have the exposure that he was seeking. But when we really peeled it all the way back, part of the reason why he was not seen or recognized was because there was no intention or there was no action made to be seen. So a lot of times people feel like if you just do a good job, someone's going to be paying attention. My manager is going to be paying attention, and my manager is going to tell me, you know what, here's an opportunity for you. I want you to pursue it. I want to see you, move towards your goals. But the honest truth is your manager is busy. Your manager could hardly keep up with their own stuff. And there's a lot of communications. And yes, in a la world, all of the managers would know everything about everybody and all that great stuff, but it's not the truth. You have to take ownership of building social relationships within your organization, and that's going to help you become seen. Something I used to do when I was working in the corporate space was what we call management by walking around. 5 minutes. 5 minutes walking around, making sure that you are seen and making sure that you are visible and just checking in with people. Sometimes you might work on the second floor and you have a team or people that you work with on the fourth floor and you don't see them for a whole year. You talk on the phone. You have no reason to go
Mm.
upstairs. You have no reason to be in the meeting. You're on the webinars or conference calls or whatever have you, but you're in the same building. So, simply getting up and walking around helps to put a face to a name and make that connection. That's the first thing. And then the second thing I'll say is, you know, outside of work, build connections outside of work. The times we get much deeper or connect deeper with people are situations where we are able to see them in situations outside of work. We're able to see that, oh, this person has an interest in what I have an interest in. Or, they are passionate about something that I'm passionate about. We form bonds and we become more visible when we are able to connect with others. In the case of the young lady that I worked with, her situation was different. And again, she wanted to be acknowledged and she wanted to be seen and wanted to be heard and visible. And going that traditional path was not one that we could take because, her upline, they were very, how do I say this? It just wasn't the path that
Okay.
we needed for her to take. So what we realized was that she had interest in some of the philanthropic activities that the organization had in place. And we allowed her to create a strategy where she could fulfill her goals of volunteering in this organization at work. This was allowing her to connect with people who were outside of her team. And some of those people were at different managerial levels. And it was something that was authentic. It wasn't something that we were creating some, checkerboard chess game strategy. It was something that was authentic and felt real to her. And I will tell you, within 9 months, the amount of recognition and visibility that she received simply from doing that was outstanding.
Wow. That's amazing. I like the fact that it's not just the day to day, if you want to call it grind, but the day to day work that will get you noticed. It can be so much more than that, and from what I understood from what you were saying, it's about focusing on your strengths and what you enjoy, as well as being part of the company and the workload as well.
Absolutely. Because any other way is not sustainable. It will work for everyone else except you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Um,
Hmm.
Talking of internal conversations, meetings can be a complete mixed bag. Sometimes you get there, it's a waste of time. Sometimes it's dead enthralling. How do we get the best out of our meetings?
I've been on both sides, I think. I think we could all think about a meeting was like, what was the purpose of that?
Yeah.
Like, did you get that? Everybody has the meeting after the meeting, you know?
Yeah.
So here's what I say. Always, always, always have an agenda. I forgot the study that was done, but I think it was a truth about meeting culture study that was giving some statistics that I think over 86% of meetings had no agenda.
Wow.
And that just blows my mind. Like, okay, so we just gonna get together and show up and what are we talking about? No. So you want to have an agenda, but another issue is that when you do have an agenda, sometimes there's so much to cover that the agenda is often overpacked. So you don't get to half of the things that are on the agenda. You don't get to complete most of them. So you want to make sure that you're actually timing the topic. Put a time frame on your agenda and send that out ahead of time so that people who are coming to the meeting have a time to even formulate their thoughts. It'll just make the time that you get together much more effective. For those people who are not quick thinkers on their feet, there's some people who you put a topic out and boom, they're like, oh, this. They're shooting from the hip. And there are people who need time to process. So if you want to really get the most out of your meetings and you have, let's say, a presentation deck or at least a high level topic, maybe 2, 3 bullets, you can send that out. These are the things that we're going to talk about. This is the purpose for the meeting. We have a purpose for the meeting. Our goal at the end of this meeting is to be able to make a decision whether we're going to use tool A or tool B, whatever it is. I'm just making this up.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to make sure that you take time, spend that necessary time. And you might say, Monique, I don't have time to do all of this, but you're going to waste time one way or the other.
Yeah.
So why not just take time to create that agenda? Make sure that you have timing segments on your agenda, send your agenda ahead of time. And then one thing that I love, I remember working with the lady who I couldn't wait to come to her meetings. That's just how well ran it was. And she would often do a short recap at the meeting because people are coming from meetings to meetings to meetings and they don't even remember what they talked about at the last meeting. So she would do a short meeting recap at the beginning. Here's what we talked about. Here's what, the high level decisions that were made, and then move into the purpose and the objective of that current meeting. And I found that that was a very seamless way to transition. So I would say if you are looking to really get everyone up to speed, even for the person who's new, let's say someone's starting and they're new and they're joining this meeting and they have no idea of what was discussed at the last meeting, they are now in a better position to contribute because they've heard sort of the decision-making path of what happened last time and now where we're going today. The last tip I will say is invest in facilitation skills. A lot of the times, if you are leading a meeting and you're leading a lot of meetings, it's like running a classroom, leading a classroom. You want to invest in having facilitation skills, being able to pull things out of people that are in the room, silence those that are being too loud or overbearing, engage or create strategies. Maybe everyone can share their thoughts in pairs and then come together. You want to make your meeting meaningful. It's not that we're just meeting to meet. We want to make sure that we're giving everyone an opportunity to contribute. So I would say definitely invest in facilitation skills. It takes the pressure off of you because now you're really just the facilitator. You're just pulling and pooling information, and always let the person who has the most seniority speak last, because if they speak first, then everyone else is going to, by nature, some magic way, lean towards that position. There's this hidden psychological perspective that the person who has the most seniority, once they give their viewpoint, and it's so easy to latch on, people start to latch on to that perspective, unless the facilitator says something like, Peter, that was great. Who can tell me something that's different from what Peter said?
Mhm.
Who can tell me something that disagrees? Where are the gaps? Who can find the gaps in Peter's response? Then we're actually having a real conversation.
But senior managers are always correct, aren't they?
Yeah, but if you have a good facilitator, I mean, you create the space. You create this
Yeah,
space and they will actually appreciate it, recognizing that, you know what? I don't have to know everything. I don't have, it's too much pressure.
yeah,
It's too much
absolutely.
pressure.
And that's why you work in teams and departments, so you don't
Yeah.
have to know or do everything. That's why. One question, this is more for me personally, to be fair, but networking is probably one of those words you either love or hate. I know some people that love it. I always struggle with networking because I'm a bit of an introvert, to be perfectly honest. Any tips how best we can engage with strangers?
So what do you struggle with the most?
I struggle with that introduction. It's probably typically English. I struggle with that, going up to somebody and going, "Hello, how are you?"
Hmm. Now, is that in a one-on-one setting or in a group? Like when there's a large meeting of people?
I think it can be both.
Okay. So when you are going there, what has been most effective for you?
I wouldn't know. No, I think the one tip that I was always given is to think that probably most people in the room are thinking similar to you, and one of the best openers is to say, um, "Can you introduce me to somebody else in the room?"
Hmm. But if I don't know you, I won't open with that. So if I'm just meeting you for the first time, I won't open with introducing me to someone else because I want to get to know you first. And the what I would say, and I would say for you, Peter, because since you said this is one of your areas as well, to
Hmm.
think back about a time when you did network successfully, where you felt like, man, that didn't even feel like networking.
Mm-hmm.
I would say think back to that moment and identify what you did, because I'm all about there's no right way, there's no one size fits all approach. So if you find that you are more effective in situations where maybe you were volunteering, and it was easier for you in that moment because the environment that you were in was something that was like, oh, we're playing cricket, and it's just so easy to start a conversation. Like, what are those moments where you find it easy or easier to start a conversation and use those outlets for your networking activities? If you are in a space where you can't choose, or you're not in that control portion where we're choosing that environment, or you're just showing up to a meeting or showing up to a conference, always get curious. Start with the opening question that is unusual or not typical. Like, okay, what do you do? What do you do is kind of hard because you feel like you have to go into that elevator speech.
Mm-hmm.
But something I would say, like where are you placing your energy these days? What's one thing that you're really proud of? Are you working on any exciting projects? Because you get people to talk about what they're working on. It's a much easier transition, and you have that one-on-one interaction because you're being curious.
Okay, now I start to get it. I'm going to try these things next time I'm networking.
Will you really? You have to tell me how it works.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm well up for that. Gonna try it next time, and I'll be in touch. Don't worry. But moving very swiftly on. Thanks for those tips, and I will try them. Promise. Are you ready for some quick fire questions?
Sure.
Okay. Name one must-read business book.
Oh, The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. Everyone must have it.
Excellent. What was the last thing you Googled?
How to actually this morning, like the very, very
The
last
very
thing.
last thing.
What I Googled was you.
Yes. First time anyone's ever said that. I'm taking that. Brilliant. That's definitely going to be a snippet for the podcast, I can tell you that. What is your most used app at the moment?
Google Maps. I use it every day, especially when I have to go to meetings in places that I have never been.
What is your one tip for people who are studying at the moment?
Teach what you are learning
Oh,
to someone to reinforce what you understand.
yes, absolutely. Final question, most important one. And I think this is going to be my opener next time I'm networking. What is your favourite type of sushi?
I could just imagine you walking up to someone, "Hey, I'm Peter. What's your favorite type of sushi?" Okay, salmon sashimi. I love it so
Oh,
much.
love it. Actually, just a quick story before we finish. We were having this conversation about networking, and we decided probably the best question would be, can I interrupt you? Can I just ask you what your best impression of an animal is? Mine is, and then do the impression.
That would be hilarious.
No. Memorable.
That could go one or two ways. Either that
Absolutely.
person would be like, "That's cool, that's creative," or they'd be like, "What type of weirdo is this?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The problem is, if they thought it was cool and they went, no, 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 you're wrong. Mine is this. Then you're probably thinking, okay, shouldn't have really introduced myself to this person.
Yes.
Okay, final question. If people want to find out more about you or what you do, where should they go?
They should connect with me on LinkedIn, Monique Russell, Clear Communication Coach, or my website, clearcommunicationsolutions.com.
Monique, thank you so, so much for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Peter.
Wow, wasn't that interesting? So many hints and tips there. So these are just a few takeaways I got from my chat with Monique. And we're going to start with Monique's tips for what to do when starting a new role. It's quite extensive. So, ask questions, pay attention to what is around you, share strengths and experiences, keep on learning and understanding the work culture. Is it for you? Do you fit in? Did I miss anything? That final question was me asking you if I missed anything. If I did, let me know. But that is quite an extensive list for you to take to work or to a new role and learn, grow, and develop. Fantastic stuff. The second takeaway is that you need intention and action to be noticed. Take ownership of building social relationships. Make the effort and try talking face to face rather than remotely. It can make a huge difference, and it's something that I'm trying to do more and more. And finally, the dreaded M word, meetings. Monique, give us a few short, handy pieces of advice to keep these on track and worthwhile. Always have an agenda, set a time frame, give the meeting a purpose and have an outcome, and also provide a short recap for those ongoing meetings or any newbies that may be joining you. And finally this week, it's the fourth and final C of the 4 C's of marketing communication, credibility. Have you ever gone to purchase something from someone that isn't credible? Seen some communications, thought, this looks dodgy, better buy it. Actually, don't answer that. Whatever you get up to in your own time is your own business, and it's really not for here, thank you. It really isn't, seriously. Get that out of your mind now. Anyway, if you haven't, there is a reason for that, and that's because communications need to be credible to stand any chance of long-term success. Yeah, you can fool some people, but not for very long, and not with any type of long-term commitment from them. So how do we do this? How do we gain credibility? Well, you need to become more credible within the mind of your customer. This can be affected by a whole host of elements: the words you use, the font types, colours, images, sounds, smells, and even the people that endorse your products and services. Yep, those influencers. With all this in mind, the one thing you need to keep front and centre when making your communications credible are your customers. What will resonate with them? What do they find credible? Answer these types of questions and you've hit the credibility motherlode. All you have to do now is be credible before, during, and after purchases within all your actions. Out of all the C's of communication, this one, credibility, for me, is the one that will provide long-term success, an affiliation with your customers, and turn them into advocates. And it's just damn ethical to be credible. Thank you so much for joining us today on Marketing Study Lab. It really means the world that you're listening to this out there. And hopefully I've provided you some value. If you're looking to know more about what Marketing Study Lab does and is about, go to marketingstudylab.co.uk or get in touch with me personally, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or feel free to email me at peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Happy marketing.